you asking me that? Why are you asking me if I'm nervous? Leave me alone. I get nervous when I come home from a trip.
Oh, just because it's been a while?
I guess.
You're funny. Every chance we talk about her romance, we talk about ours.
Because I'm relating.
They said polygamy was about love and faith. Turns out it was about control, money, and one man's ego. This is the story of how the Brown family turned hypocrisy into a lifestyle and called it holiness. If moral contradictions could be measured in decibels, the Browns would shatter glass. Janelle, the self-anointed libertarian of the brood, has made an art form out of lamenting government inadequacy while simultaneously benefiting from the very social structures she claims to despise. For years, she postured as the voice of rugged individualism, lecturing about the sanctity of self-reliance and the evils of big government, all while her children went without basic health care and her household quietly cycled through food stamps and bankruptcies. It's a rare skill to complain about the system while draining it dry. This is a woman who sneers at government assistance yet cries foul when the state doesn't swoop in to ensure her overpopulated clan. The hypocrisy would be almost comical if it weren't so depressingly common. Janelle's narrative of being left behind by the cold bureaucracy rings hollow when one recalls that she had a government job, complete with access to retirement and, most likely, subsidized insurance. The problem was never access. It was accountability. Like so many of her family's decisions, not insuring the children was a choice disguised as victimhood. The Browns' household economy has always resembled a slow-motion financial car crash. Kody, the self-declared patriarch, paraded around on motorcycles and posed next to shiny, impractical cars while the children wore hand-me-downs and their medical needs went unmet. Meanwhile, the wives engaged in fiscal cannibalism, sniping about who contributed more to the family pot, as though their collective poverty were a moral contest. Janelle once castigated Mary for not handing over enough of her paycheck, only to later reveal she'd been stashing away funds in a private retirement account while her own children lacked basic coverage. Her libertarian creed evidently extends only as far as her personal savings account. To understand the Brown family's dysfunction is to witness the American delusion in miniature, the belief that one can live as a sovereign island while still demanding the comforts of the mainland. Janelle rails against taxes, regulation, and the welfare state. Yet her entire adult life has been cushioned by public benefits, bankruptcy protection, and television paychecks subsidized by the same audience she holds in contempt. It's capitalism for profit and socialism for consequence, a perfect reflection of the modern moral pretzel. And let us not forget the convenient theology that props it all up. Bleeding the beast, as it's called in certain fundamentalist Mormon circles, is the pious term for exploiting government assistance while condemning those who do the same. It's the act of gaming a system one claims to transcend. Janelle's public grievance about health insurance isn't a plea for justice. It's performance art for the self-righteous. She condemns the welfare queens while quietly mimicking their every alleged sin. The irony grows even richer when she donates to politicians who actively seek to dismantle affordable healthcare, including the very policies that would have covered her children. This is the political logic of the Browns. Vote against universal coverage, then weep on camera when the private market declines to foot the bill for your lifestyle experiment. In Janelle's world, self-sufficiency means the freedom to make catastrophic decisions, so long as someone else pays for them. Kody, of course, is the spiritual and financial epicenter of this delusion. His vision of leadership involves luxuriating in expensive toys while his wives play domestic musical chairs with limited resources. The women, conditioned to avoid confrontation, never dared to hold him accountable for decades of poor financial management. The result? A man-child crowned king of chaos, supported by wives who mistake martyrdom for virtue. Kody's defining trait, his ability to dodge blame while basking in attention, has metastasized into a full-blown lifestyle brand. Robyn's later entrance into this circus merely exposed what was already rotten. The wife's decision to tolerate Kody's neglect long before she arrived set the stage for her to become both scapegoat and savior. The family's financial collapse cannot be pinned solely on her, though she certainly exacerbated it with her taste for high living and emotional manipulation. The rot began years earlier, when poverty was sanctified as faith, and responsibility was replaced by resentment. If the Brown family represents anything, it is the sanctimonious American paradox. A chorus of leave-us-alone libertarians who can't survive without the institutions they scorn. Their move to Flagstaff was an almost cinematic demonstration of this absurdity. They wanted the conservative values of Arizona's political culture, yet required the social tolerance of a liberal enclave to accommodate their unconventional family structure. It's the moral equivalent of demanding steakhouse service in a vegan cafe. Janelle's personal narrative of hardship would carry more weight if it weren't punctuated by the occasional purchase of a luxury RV, her idea of self-reliance, apparently, while her daughter peered at her father's mansion from a parking lot. One can almost admire the audacity. Poverty as an aesthetic, thrift as a brand, all broadcast for profit. The show's producers, too, shoulder blame. They paraded this family as a testament to plural marriage and faith while neglecting the obvious. Those children were unpaid child actors in a televised morality play. The network monetized neglect, and the Browns were happy to let them. It is easy to pity the children, products of adults who confused stubbornness with principle. Their mothers prioritized appeasing Kody over their own children's welfare, terrified of losing his fickle affection. The result is a generation raised in emotional triage, where love was measured in screen time and the father's approval was the currency of survival. And yet, the wives, so vocal about female empowerment in later years, were complicit in building the very throne from which Kody now mocks them. The greatest tragedy isn't that the Browns lacked resources. It's that they lacked introspection. The television money flowed, the homes expanded, and yet the rhetoric never changed. They still spoke of persecution, of moral fortitude, of the outsider's burden. They played at being rebels while quietly depending on the empire. And now, as their empire crumbles, they continue to confuse martyrdom for meaning. In truth, Janelle's libertarianism was never about freedom. It was about absolution. Freedom from accountability. Freedom from admitting that poor choices, not government policy, bred her family's dysfunction. Freedom to wrap selfishness in the language of principle. It's the same illusion that sustains countless self-proclaimed independent thinkers who mistake ideology for identity. The Browns are not victims of a broken system. They are the system. Its hypocrisy, its self-interest, its refusal to learn. Their story isn't just tabloid fodder. It's a morality play for a nation that wants tax cuts and free health care, moral superiority and moral indulgence, personal freedom and public rescue. The Browns merely televised it. And Janelle, ever the reluctant libertarian, remains its perfect high priestess, preaching self-reliance from the pulpit of a network paycheck, waving the flag of independence while standing knee-deep in dependency. There comes a moment in every long-running reality spectacle when the mask slips, not with a scream, but with a smirk. For the Browns, that moment arrived when Kody, patriarch of the polygamist apocalypse, blithely admitted he had outlets during his courtship with Robin. Translation: when his hormones became inconvenient, he used his existing wives as sexual pressure valves. It was a line so grotesque, so unintentionally revealing, that it turned years of pious talk about spiritual marriage into a punchline. For over a decade, Kody and his wives spun their story as a sacred alternative to monogamy. More love, more faith, more community. What it really offered was more access. His confession, aired without a flicker of shame, stripped the doctrine of its last shred of moral camouflage. The women he once called partners were, by his own words, outlets, biological receptacles for his self-control. To think he saw no problem saying it on camera is almost poetic in its idiocy. This is the man who built his empire on a platform of spiritual purity, claiming his unions were about celestial commitments rather than carnal indulgence. But behind the rhetoric was a man driven by appetite, and a religion conveniently shaped to accommodate it. His wives, stripped of autonomy, became spiritual employees, each responsible for the maintenance of his ego and libido. The principle of plural marriage, as Kody lived it, was simply an HR manual for one man's narcissism. The irony is that for years he insisted that his lifestyle wasn't about sex. He said it with the fervor of a preacher, as though repeating the lie enough times would make it sound virtuous. Yet, when the curtain finally lifted, we found him lamenting Robin's fading physical appeal and fantasizing about new wives as though they were collectible figurines. The supposed prophet of partnership reduced himself to a man shopping for diamonds, very attractive, adoring of Robin, and presumably willing to tolerate his vanity in exchange for airtime. Even Robin, the eternal martyr of this morality play, seemed caught off guard by the honesty. Once the poster child for pious womanhood, she's now tethered to a man who publicly objectifies her while demanding gratitude. The same woman who once tearfully spoke of sisterhood now sits beside him, the last remaining believer in a faith that has clearly lost its script. Her silence is no longer dignified. It's delusional. The Browns' theology of chastity was always a thin disguise for control. Their courting periods, those laughably brief high-drama interludes, were less about spiritual discernment than about delayed gratification. The shame surrounding sex only amplified its power, and Kody, ever the self-styled moral leader, wielded that tension like a club. He positioned himself as both tempter and redeemer, the man who could lead women to heaven if they could first endure the earthly trial of sharing him. It's a scam as old as religion itself. The outlet remark merely made explicit what the show had long implied. Kody used his wives not as equals, but as instruments, objects of moral theater, domestic convenience, and sexual utility. He was never interested in the emotional labor of partnership, only in the validation of possession. Every tear, every declaration of love, every biblical quotation served to decorate his self-worship. And yet, he is so oblivious to his own absurdity that he narrates his downfall as though it were an act of divine persecution. In his mind, he is Job, beset by ungrateful wives and rebellious children. In reality, he is a man reaping the very chaos he sowed. Decades of neglect, emotional manipulation, and delusional grandeur coming home to roost. His idea of intimacy has always been transactional, attention traded for obedience, affection for allegiance. One almost feels sorry for Robin. Almost. She may not have created the monster, but she certainly polished his crown. Her perpetual tears and martyr's sighs were the soundtrack to his transformation from garden-variety egotist to full-fledged despot. By framing herself as the misunderstood victim, she gave Kody permission to double down on his self-pity. Together, they built a feedback loop of emotional theater. He performs outrage, she performs pain, and the audience performs forgiveness. Meanwhile, their children, especially Robin's, have become apprentices in this performance. Trained to defend their mother's honor at the faintest hint of criticism, they parrot her insecurities with unnerving precision. Watching Aurora leap to her mother's defense in interviews, insisting that all the moms are funny when someone merely praises Christine, feels like witnessing the next generation of damage take shape. It isn't loyalty, it's indoctrination. Robin, ever the covert narcissist, has turned maternal love into emotional conscription. Her daughters are not simply loved, they are enlisted. They fawn, flatter, and echo her every thought, not out of genuine conviction, but out of survival. When a parent's approval is tied to constant emotional validation, a child learns to perform adoration as a form of protection. Fawning, the therapists call it. In the Brown household, it's a family tradition. The tragedy is that this dynamic once masqueraded as love. Kody's selective affection created a hierarchy of worth among the children. Those aligned with Robin basked in approval, while the others were exiled from emotional relevance. The man who once preached unity presided over a household divided by competition. In his universe, love is a reward for loyalty, and dissent is betrayal. Watching the family implode on camera has become an act of sociological study. Every episode reveals a new layer of self-delusion. Kody's swaggering monologues about being a man, Robin's martyrdom rewritten as sainthood, and the lingering wives trying to rebrand victimhood as empowerment. It's Shakespearean tragedy recast as reality television, except the clowns are running the court. The moral decay is now so complete that even their attempts at redemption feel performative. Kody's declarations about wanting a new wife for companionship collapse under the weight of his own libido. Robin's pleas for peace ring hollow next to her gleeful isolation of Kody from his other families. Their unity is an alliance of desperation, held together by the one thing they've always shared, the camera. The show itself has become their final polygamous partner, the one entity that still gives them attention. They can no longer sustain their delusions privately, so they outsource them to the audience. The cameras validate their victimhood, the paychecks justify their dysfunction, and the viewers serve as the new congregation. In this church, hypocrisy is tithing, and ratings are redemption. Kody's downfall would be pitiable if it weren't so richly earned. He built his identity on moral superiority, demanded devotion without accountability, and now finds himself surrounded by the ruins of his own myth. His wives have fled, his children have turned skeptics, and his kingdom of control has withered into a two-person pity party. Still, he cannot grasp that his undoing wasn't betrayal. It was truth. When Kody speaks about wanting only beautiful women who adore him, he reveals not just his misogyny but his terror. Beneath the bravado is a man terrified of irrelevance, clinging to youth, sex, and adoration as though they were sacraments. His craving for new wives isn't about love, it's about validation. He needs someone new to believe the lie because everyone old has stopped pretending. The show may call itself Sister Wives, but the real marriage has always been between Kody and his ego. Every woman, every child, every episode was just another ceremony in his ongoing self-worship. When he speaks of being faithful, it isn't to God or family. It's to the mythology of Kody Brown, the misunderstood visionary of suburban polygamy. His outlets were never about restraint. They were about ownership. And his downfall, televised in high definition, is the inevitable conclusion of a man who mistook power for love and self-indulgence for destiny. The wives were never his partners. They were his mirrors. And now that they've shattered, he's left staring into the only reflection that ever mattered, his own. The great irony of the Brown family saga is that its most vocal survivors, Christine, Janelle, and Mary, emerged from polygamy only to begin auditioning for new roles in the drama they helped sustain. Each now styles herself as an independent woman, liberated from the tyranny of Kody's ego. Yet, scratch the surface and you'll find that the old dynamics, the competition, the performance, the craving for validation, linger like smoke after the fire. Freedom, it seems, comes easier than self-awareness. Christine, once the eternally chipper housewife performing sainthood for the cameras, has become the star of her own redemption arc, and she's milking it with Broadway enthusiasm. In early seasons, she was the giggling cheerleader of plural marriage, preaching the joys of sisterhood, while quietly drowning in jealousy and fatigue. Now, post-divorce, she's discovered a new gospel, the religion of reinvention. Every episode, every interview, every forced sing-along has the manic energy of someone desperate to convince both the audience and herself that she's thriving. Her newfound extroversion might have been endearing had it not curdled into exhibitionism. The exaggerated laughter, the constant need to command attention, the emotional volume turned permanently to 11, It all reeks of someone who cannot stand silence because silence might reveal discomfort. The act that once masked misery now conceals insecurity. Christine's post-Kody glow-up has turned into a stage show about healing, complete with audience participation and commercial breaks. Her marriage to the endlessly agreeable David only underscores the point. He's less a partner than a prop, proof that she can, in fact, be chosen by a man. The union feels less like romance and more like a performance of moving on, designed for maximum narrative closure. Yet, behind the smiles, one senses the restlessness of someone who's realized that escaping Kody didn't mean escaping the need to be adored. Janelle, by contrast, performs exhaustion like an Olympic sport. Once the pragmatic foil to Christine's exuberance, she now radiates the weary pragmatism of a woman who has run out of illusions. Her friendship with Christine, initially touching, now tedious, was born from shared disillusionment, not genuine compatibility. Two women bound by a mutual exasperation with Kody mistook trauma bonding for deep friendship. Now that the dust has settled, they're discovering why they were never close in the first place. Janelle's stoicism, once admirable, has calcified into avoidance. She was the wife who prided herself on staying above the fray, the one who understood Kody's moods and refused to nag. That restraint, celebrated as strength, was in truth a form of surrender. She mistook silence for dignity while her children grew up watching her accept neglect as normalcy. Her libertarian facade, the talk of independence, the disdain for assistance, was always a cover for resignation. In the end, her brand of peace was simply learned helplessness wrapped in competence. Then there is Mary, the pariah, the cautionary tale, the woman the family loves to hate. Her name alone seems to trigger collective amnesia about context. Everyone remembers the catfish scandal, the temper, the tears. Few remember that she was once the structural backbone of that sprawling household, the one who organized, enforced, and provided a semblance of order while the others floated in chaos. In a family allergic to boundaries, she was the only adult willing to draw them. Naturally, she became the villain. Mary's fall from grace wasn't due to cruelty, it was due to visibility. She made her discomfort known. In a system that thrived on women suppressing their dissatisfaction, her unwillingness to smile through humiliation made her expendable. The narrative quickly crystallized. Christine was fun, Janelle was logical, Robin was emotional, and Mary was difficult. Translation? Mary expected respect, and in the Brown universe, nothing was more offensive. Now, exiled to the edges of the family and saddled with an unwanted sidekick named Jen, Mary has become a tragic figure wandering through filler segments about dating apps and self-discovery. Watching her swipe through strangers for camera time is less empowering than it is existentially bleak. A woman who gave her entire identity to a man now trying to find herself through algorithmic flirtation. TLC calls it content. Psychologists would call it grief avoidance. What's striking, though, is how revisionist memory has become the family's final shared tradition. The children who once adored Mary now parrot narratives of her alleged cruelty, yet still cling to the traditions she created: the Christmas pajamas, the candy cane rituals, the structured holidays that gave their chaotic childhood some sense of rhythm. Even as they vilify her, they preserve her legacy, as if subconsciously acknowledging that discipline and affection can coexist. Memory in the Brown household is both weapon and keepsake. The intergenerational damage is perhaps the most haunting. Robin's children, steeped in their mother's defensiveness, have learned to view love as conditional performance. Aurora's need to defend Robin's sense of humor, or to lavish praise over something as banal as remembering tongs at a cookout, is not filial devotion. It's fear disguised as admiration. When a parent confuses validation with affection, a child learns to perform rather than feel. In Robin's house, even a compliment to another mother becomes an act of disloyalty. The other children have internalized different lessons: cynicism, detachment, skepticism. They watched adults preach unity while practicing division, love while modeling control. Some have cut contact, others maintain polite distance. But the through line is unmistakable. None of them believe in the mythology anymore. The grand experiment of plural harmony has ended in a diaspora of disillusionment. Christine's older children oscillate between defensiveness and disdain, alternately idolizing and resenting the parents who built a religion out of dysfunction. They've seen behind the curtain. The magic is gone. When they reminisce about family traditions, it's nostalgia for a childhood that was at least predictable in its chaos. That's the paradox of trauma. The thing that harmed you can also be the thing you miss. As for Kody and Robin, now marooned on their self-made island, they continue to narrate their isolation as divine persecution. In their telling, the others abandoned faith, abandoned love, abandoned them. In truth, they simply stopped participating in the delusion. Kody's insistence that he was betrayed is the final act of a man who cannot comprehend that obedience is not the same as affection. The show limps on, now a ghost of its former self, feeding off residual voyeurism and the morbid curiosity of an audience that once believed it was watching a love story. What it has become is a sociological autopsy, a dissection of control, delusion, and the emotional collateral of self-deception. The Browns began as a portrait of faith and family. They've ended as a cautionary tale about what happens when performance replaces truth. And yet, there is something grimly poetic about it all. The wives who once defined themselves by their proximity to Kody are now learning, in halting, awkward ways, to exist without him. Some do it by pretending to flourish, others by pretending not to care. None have truly confronted the depth of what they enabled. They are rebuilding their lives on the ruins of a belief system that told them obedience was holiness and suffering was sanctity. Freedom, for them, will always be laced with guilt. Mary remains the ghost at the feast, the woman everyone disowns yet cannot stop invoking. Janelle remains the pragmatist, steady but stagnant. Christine remains the performer, thriving on applause but haunted by the need for it. Robin remains the architect of her own isolation, surrounded by adoring children who confuse loyalty with love. And Kody, the sun around which they once orbited, sits in the ashes of his own mythology, still muttering about betrayal while the cameras roll. In the end, the sisterhood was never about unity. It was about survival. Each woman carved a niche in the ecosystem of Kody's ego, mistaking endurance for empowerment. When the structure collapsed, so did the illusion that they were ever a team. What remains are fragments, some bitter, some nostalgic, all irrevocably shaped by the gravitational pull of one man's vanity. The Browns once sold America on a dream of plural harmony. What they delivered was a masterclass in collective denial, a televised sermon on how to mistake suffering for strength and hypocrisy for faith. The show may one day fade, but its moral will linger. When devotion becomes performance and family becomes brand, the love you're selling will always expire faster than the contract that pays for it. We're just here to name the smoke. Subscribe.